So in this video, I want to talk to you about the harsh truth about climbing the corporate ladder, right? These companies aren't loyal and lots of people get caught up in a lot of the lies. So I just want to go through some of the details here. If you're new to the channel, just a bit about my background. I've worked in the finance industry for over a decade, investment banking, sales and trading type roles, at Goldman's, Morgan Stanley and other banks. So I kind of know some of the lies that get played with regards to you as an employee at one of these companies or companies in general. So let's go through this in a bit of detail. So one of the harsh truths that no one tells you is that company loyalty is essentially a con, right? Companies want you to be extremely focused on the job, title, the specific salary you're earning, and focusing you on doing extra work for the company, as they want you to think that the only way for you to earn a high income is through working harder for the company itself to make the company more successful. They want to kind of distract you from the fact that maybe you could diversify your income sources, focus on investing and things like that. So when people kind of essentially ignore the alternative opportunities for themselves, they're so focused on their day job, they end up neglecting other areas of their life and other avenues of making money, right? So company loyalty is typically a one-way street. They will dispose of you ASAP as soon as possible. So it's best to focus on some level of self-sufficiency. And that's not just investing. That could be diversifying your skill set, diversifying your other income sources, having minimalism and self-sufficiency through that too. So that's worthwhile considering. A second point is harnessing your ambition without attachment, right? You want to leverage your ambition to make as much money as possible, right? But you shouldn't attach your entire identity necessarily to your career or to the company you're working for. Your sense of self-worth should be independent of your job title, and or the company that you're working for. You may need to pivot at some point in terms of changing your career, maybe going into another niche within your particular industry or another industry, maybe a different department at the company you're working at, a slightly different role or different company. And many people get attached to the brand of a company and think that's where they need to progress, right? But you need to look out for your best interests and progress through making major shifts throughout your career, particularly these days when one job at one company is not stable for decades on end, like the previous baby boomer generation. But also the economy is changing rapidly. You see automation, AI, different fintech innovations in the finance industry, jobs getting outsourced. There are some people I know, for example, who worked in trading surveillance. They would surveillance trades in major investment banks in London, for example. And she reached a kind of ceiling, how far she could get at the company, like middle management. So she shifted from London to New York. And her husband traveled with her and moved to New York and got a job there too. They worked there for many years, 5 to 10 year type of time period, and then after that she actually moved to India to run the outsourcing department there, right? And that's kind of really drastic moves. Many people won't be comfortable constantly shifting their life every 5 to 10 years. London, New York, Mumbai, India, it's not for everyone, but the point is she did make the shifts needed to progress her career. I know many people who get stuck at middle management and then they make the shift when needed rather than just think they've got a safe position at a particular company and they're well liked, which is important to be liked at your particular company. But if you really want to push forward and you can see they don't see making it to the next level, then you might need to make a major shift, right? There's no point you keep playing a losing game, stuck in a position, thinking things will just work out if you just put in a bit of extra effort, when in some cases they just simply won't. Next, I want you to avoid the inferiority complex, which is more common than you think in a lot of corporate roles, right? It's important to a certain extent to be aware where you are compared to your peers. You could probably, make some fair estimations as to maybe you're working at a particular company with a particular job title, what salary range you're in and other people are in your particular age group, maybe people you went to university with, or people who are generally in your industry. So you can have a rough idea how much other people are working and how much money they're making. But it's important not to be constantly playing the game of comparison, right? It can make you kind of jealous and envious of other people at your level or at your age group, and it's kind of a waste of time and energy. It makes you weaker, and in effect, particularly as a man, it makes you lose frame, if you're familiar with a term of maintaining frame or masculine frame and things like that. If you're constantly feeling like you need to suck up to make it to the next level, or you're constantly competing with someone else who maybe has an investment property, who's in your age group, you don't know if they got that money from their parents or if they're leveraging massive mortgages to buy that investment property. If someone has a fancy job title, but that might be in a back office role. I've seen sometimes on the trading floor of major investment banks when people have a lot of free time in between trading activity or other tasks, they'll just be like searching people that they used to work with on Google or LinkedIn to find out where they're working, what their job title and salary might be. It's kind of a waste of time. And there's so many unfair instances that can occur. You can't really compare yourself to anyone in this society, right? And I don't just mean that for your mindset in terms of, oh, you got to be positive. I just mean you never know. Someone else might have got, 500 grand from their parents to invest in property. Like I know someone who done something similar to that, and they own several properties and they hadn't even hit 30 and they weren't making loads of money in the finance industry. So I could only assume they got a lot of money from their parents. I wouldn't assume that they or somehow managed to buy all this property, and they're probably in a lot of mortgage debt. And obviously when interest rates go up, that could negatively impact them. But that's a good example of just seeing someone else's success. You don't know what the actual financial situation is. Many people are in way more debt than you think they really are. So it's worthwhile not to compare yourself to others. Really focus on your game plan and the shifting dynamics around you and how you can leverage your particular situation to benefit you. So just before we move on, after talking about avoiding the inferiority complex, I wanted to just briefly mention that I do have a coaching program, right? It's called the Company Man Success Secrets. I'll help you achieve complete career control, improving your career situation, whether it's job hopping or getting promoted, dealing with a layoff, how to manage a layoff situation, help you improve your CV, LinkedIn and cover letter and your personal professional brand, outsmarting office politics, and dealing with the awkward social dynamics being a man in the corporate world these days. So link in description if you want to speak with me directly. Next, the thing is promotions, right? I covered this in videos a few days ago, actually, around promotions, right? Promotions aren't always a positive thing. Sometimes it does depend on the particular circumstances, right? If you're getting promoted, will you be in a more stable position, or will you be constantly chasing the approval of those above you or at your level? Are you effectively a lapdog to the management above you that you might be getting promoted to, interacting with? I've seen that many times where I use the term lapdog, or like a pet dog, where a man has to basically pander to typically a female boss or a girl boss type of archetype above him, or even another male boss, fake laughing at his jokes, things like that. So it's like worthwhile considering, okay, if I get promoted to the next level, am I going to have a lot of power, or is it going to turn into a really passive, submissive dynamic that you have to participate in to earn that high salary and keep that particular level? And it does depend, because it depends on who your manager will be in the future. So you have to think about the shifting social dynamics. Some cases it can be quite positive, because you might go from maybe managing 2 people to managing a team of 20 people, and then you've got a lot of power and leverage, right, to make people working for you and doing the work exactly how you want them to do it, play office politics, leverage those 20 people to maybe, in some cases, help on project work with other teams, to give you more leverage to maybe grow your team, to show how important you are to the company as a manager. So there's all these subtle dynamics you got to really think about how that will change for you. And like I say, you don't want to be in a situation where you get promoted and you think it's super good, and then you don't really think about the dynamics, and you might be stuck in a position where you have to constantly parrot your manager's opinions, becoming a yes man to them in this kind of demeaning situation, which can be emasculating, or lead you to become quite disillusioned with your career. In some cases, rather than take the promotion, you might want to split and move to another company. Or in some cases, I think it could be good to take the promotion, even if you don't like the particular role, but at least you get that new job title, which you can leverage to higher salaries at another company. So you go from associate to vice president in a team you don't like social dynamics, but the job vice president, you can leverage to get into another company and increasing your salary dramatically, right? So you need to think about how things change when you do get promoted, right? Your work ethic, might be a secondary factor. It might be more dependent, as I've seen it, success factor, and how you're judged is how well do you fit in with other people at your level. Say you go from a junior employee to middle management. The criteria for how you're really judged is how well do you fit in with the other middle management. Are you playing the cliquey games? Are you going to after work drinks with them? Are you playing the right office politics with them? That's what becomes bigger of a factor, and that's why you should think carefully about promotions or whether you actually want to pursue them. Now, number 5, progress is sometimes out of your control to a certain extent. So progress and promotions and things like that, right? Sometimes people who control promotions simply might not like you, and you can't always change that, right? Even with more fake nice behavior, right? Even if you kind of try to play the game, it might simply not work. Some people just don't like you. There could be underlying reasons there, they might not like people from your race or your religion or maybe gender. They might have a bias against you based on that. So some things are just out of your control. You might think, oh, if I double down and work hard, or I be really nice to this person, maybe they'll like me and they'll put me up for a promotion. But so many cases that just doesn't exist. So you need to realize what is kind of in your control and what's not in your control, so you don't get disillusioned or depressed or disheartened, right? See, the many people in effect, right, they tend to promote people based on their own in-group preference. And what do I mean by that, right? So sometimes there could be hiring quotas for certain demographics. I've covered DEI many times, or gender bias favoring women when it comes to some hiring and promotion quotas. People could also promote people who are their personal favorites, their friends, and things like that. So just bear in mind, if things aren't working in your favor, it's best to move, but it's also best to kind of be detached. You can only be improving your situation to an extent through your work ethic or through being polite and professional. Point number 6, right? Top management layers are based on a tight network, not hard work, or in many cases, even sucking up, right? In some cases, we have employees who just suck up and they're average employees, but they make it to relatively senior levels. But there's always a glass ceiling there, where at a certain level, the top man will be a closed network. Is essentially a tight circle of people who keep power amongst themselves. They might hire friends outside of work to those top roles rather than hiring internally. And they'll hire friends from outside work who might not be the smartest directly to the top level. It's like a social game, right? Typically, this is a social class. You might have heard a term which I highly recommend you look into, called the managerial class or the managerial state, which is just a broad word of describing these type of weak, dumb people who typically rule over all of us. You might see them in middle management or senior middle management, in corporations. You see them in politicians. How many times have you looked at a politician, particularly in the UK or Europe, Canada, places like that? Sometimes you're like, how did this man get it to a position of leadership, or this woman? Like, they don't seem that smart. They don't seem that qualified. And it's typically these type of like yuppie liberal demographics who might have more left-leaning ideologies and things like that, right? I would I want to note this briefly, and I know I always mention this demographic who rule over us, the managerial class, managerial state. I think it's interesting what they're going to be facing with, because typically, and if we look at the image here, just as an example, we can't generalize too much. I don't want to judge people too much based on how they look, but typically you have these kind of effeminate liberal man, the soy boy bugman archetype, and these type of entitled woman, right, too. And I always find it interesting how they've based a lot of their power structure through kind of these self-righteous virtue signaling type of projecting behavior, right? And I always think, what's going to happen over the next few years? Because many people actually resent this demographic, right? And I'm not talking about race here. I'm talking about the type of ideology they have and how they push it on other people, and how these self-righteous indignation about whatever ideology they have. And I always find it interesting because many people don't like the position, the people who rule over us. It's very hard to respect them, right? And they've effectively created many adversaries. It could be conservative white men who see them being through DEI practices. It could be men in general who see biases against them, or men who want to just conduct themselves in a traditional masculine way, and they've kind of been marginalized to a certain extent. And certain demographics don't like the fact that when it's convenient for them, for this power structure, the managerial state, to run a political agenda and treat certain demographics like little pets, to kind of play the victim narrative card, and these people who rule over us want to say we want to empower this particular racial demographic or religious demographic, the migrants, whoever it would be. Many people are just fed up of this kind of game that's getting played, right? And how people are being manipulated, or certain times they're called the oppressor or the oppressed or the victim, and things like that. So many people are very frustrated with the people who rule over us, right? I know in some cases, Asians, for example, I'm from Indian descent. Asians are fed up with the DEI agenda not favoring them, or them being marginalized through some of these promotion and hiring practices. I think it's going to get real rough for the demographic, the managerial state that rule over us, because everyone's seeing how rigged the game is and how they play off different demographics or genders against each other. I think it's going to get real rough for them as more and more people are going to be vying for power, right? I can't imagine, to put it as nice as I can, if you have an AWFL in a position of power, affluent white female liberal, and as demographic changes, right, and there's more migrant workers, for example, who don't have these brainwashed liberal feminist ideas, how is she going to rule over maybe a team of 5 men, military age, working age men from a migrant background, let's just keep it broad like that, who don't believe in a lot of this ideology, who are going to be thinking, why is this woman dictating to me and telling me what to do, right? You're going to have these type of weird social dynamics play out in real time, and it's going to be quite funny. You can't have a Karen, so many people who are Karens, HR Karens in management, and then you have migrant workers who might have more traditional masculine beliefs, gender role beliefs, religious beliefs that are going to be completely at odds with them. And that's the way the demographic's shifting, right? Corporations want to put a certain type of person in position of power, but as the demographics of the masses keep changing now, because the rapid migration to the West, it's going to create issues, all types of dynamics between men and women, which are just going to be kind of funny. You're going to see how things change. But let's keep moving on. Right? Let me know in the comments what you think about that. So the thing is, a lot of these people who rule over us, top management, you might initially, when you enter the corporate world, think, oh, they must be super smart, they must have worked hard to be there. And even if they didn't, they must be super talented at what they do to maintain their position, even if they got the job through networking. But the truth is, a lot of these people, they're not necessarily smarter than you. In many cases, you can outsmart them and outwork them. They're typically the definition of average, mediocre, no real signs of greatness, and lots of average conformists who express these kind of inoffensive, politically correct opinions and approaches to running things. So, like I say, many people have to understand that if you don't play that game, that extreme kind of politically correct version of yourself, if you don't want to play that game, there will be a filtering out process. And there's a reason why a certain type of man or certain type of woman don't make it to these levels. And it's not always necessarily based on race or gender. It's based on all the subtleties of how you conduct yourself, how you spend your personal life. Are you living in the kind of fancy part of town, part of that networking circle? And many of us are not part of that, and we just don't want to be part of it, to be quite frank, right? It's more of a personality test than it is about anything else. A lot of these kind of conformity tests that they'll give you to see if you fit in within their social group, they're not giving you technical tests to see if you have technical skills. They're giving you conformity tests to see if you fit in with their social group, whether you agree with their opinions, and whether you agree with their snap judgments on changing work quickly, like you spent all this time doing a particular avenue of work, a particular project work, and then they snap their fingers, say, no, we need to do it differently now. Are you going to quickly adjust and say, yes, I'm going to do it? Or are you going to question them and say, well, actually, I put a lot of time and effort into this. I don't be changing everything now. They want to see how much you're willing to not only suck up to them, but kind of quickly parrot whatever they say and whatever they want, right? It's best to learn this now rather than thinking you're going to make it to that level and building your entire identity as someone who's going to climb the corporate ladder all the way to the top. Rather than hitting your head against a brick wall and getting miserable, it's worthwhile kind of figuring it out now that'd be close to you if you tried to reach it. In many cases, particularly in this economy, you have to understand your current job is a short-term situation, right? So you should make sure it benefits you and that you have an exit plan. Invest in your skill development and understand this is just a place you're going to be working at, let's just say for 3 to 5 years, depending on your situation. And it's just a place to get a new company with its brand name of whatever that company is on your CV before leveling up. You should have a mindset of no loyalty to a particular company, a no loyalty mindset. That's the best way of seeing things. These companies aren't loyal. And if you want to motivate yourself, is have a countdown of 3 years maximum, I would say, depending on the situation, of course, that you want to leave the company. So if you know you're there for 3 years, the first 6 months to a year, you're settling in, doing some decent work, developing some connections to make sure you present yourself well. The second year, you really need to perform and do well. Same in the third year. But if things are not really showing signs of progress in the third year, maybe getting promoted, major salary increases, you should consider pivoting to another role, right? So that's what I mean. If you focus on what is the company doing to help you build your situation, building skills, boosting your CV, having an exit plan, those are all key things to focus on. It's a phrase, right? They say it's just business, it's nothing personal, but often it is personal, right? Often the situation you're in is personal in the sense that climbing the corporate ladder is accelerated by sleeping around, nepotism, getting recommendations from the management's favorite inner circle, other outside industry organizations. Sometimes people move from a financial regulator like the SEC or CFTC or the FCA to a major corporation because they have the connections through there, or industry bodies, and that's how people get some of their jobs. Or there could be private clubs outside of work, right? And I don't just mean like secret societies. There's many members only clubs, for example, in London, in high finance, rich people, essentially clubs for them. They're private networking groups where you might have to pay a couple grand to be part of to go to these particular country clubs, things like that, or social clubs in central London. And if you're part of that inner circle where they take care of their own, they're going to give their preferential treatment to their inner circle and not you, right? So just bear that in mind. This idea that when people make decisions, for example, when it comes to layoffs, it's not always just a business decision of saving costs. A lot of the times it's, people who are in the inner circle that you might not be even aware of social situations. You could have two people who are in a relationship that don't make it public in the office, but you'll notice through favoritism that there is something going on there. Point number 9 is charm and charisma, right? Charm and charisma can generate a lot of cash, right? In the sense that it's important to be friendly in all your interactions with everyone else, right? Some people think it's okay to be serious. I know myself, sometimes I'm quite serious in the work environment, just focus on getting my work done. But people have a lot of leverage by being a funny, goofy, joker type of character, right? If you're a popular person, people will overlook low quality work or being late on work projects or even late to attending work or work meetings because they just see you as a bit of a funny character in the office. I've seen that many times, and they have a lot of job security through doing that. And typically, if they get promoted over you, you might query why, right? And typically, if a popular person gets promoted ahead of you and you don't see any real high quality work that they're producing, the way management will describe it is say that, oh, that more popular person, they're more of a team player than you, they're more engaged than you, simply because they talk more at work, even though the quality of their work might suck, right? Management will justify promoting a popular person over you, saying, oh, they're more strategic, they have a stronger presence, they have a fresh perspective, they have a diversity of ideas, or maybe their diversity higher. And also that they hit the ground running, they have a unique skill set, but they can't really nail down concrete reasons why they promoted this person, either because management are kind of, under the illusion of how nice this person is or popular this person is, that they're good at their job, or that they're just covering the fact that they've hired someone they actually like over you, right? And it's nothing to do with your work output. So that's another harsh truth about working in corporate jobs. A lot of the times you might be focused on doing your current job, and they might say, oh, you're focused on your continued development, just keep doing this. In the future you could pursue leadership opportunities, we'll bear you in mind for the future. We identified another candidate who has a better background, who complements the team structure, they're more aligned with our current needs. We appreciate you, but we had to make a tough decision and we still highly value you. Those are the type of passive aggressive ways of kind of saying, we just like someone, they're more nice than you or they're more popular than you. Now, point number 10 is around controlling things, right? I want you to control your corporation, or see yourself as you, Inc., your corporation, however you want to describe it. You're a company of one. And as a side note, I just want to mention a book called Company of One, which is quite interesting. Many of you have heard of the 4-Hour Work Week, and it's very similar along those lines. It's about people who build a niche skill set and become a company of one. It's not necessarily full of practical tips, but it's kind of interesting because it makes you think about, okay, how do I have my own personal brand? How do I describe myself? How do I make myself unique in terms of my skill set, right? So in some cases, if you build a unique skill set, rather than climb the corporate ladder, you will have more leverage. Maybe develop unique skills and qualifications, have a public portfolio on LinkedIn, on a personal website where it shows some of your skills. Maybe if you're in the tech industry, having a portfolio of some of the projects you've worked on. Similar with finance, you could have analysis you've done and a few financial reports to show as an example of your skills. Having good time management, health is wealth, location independence in global markets is also important. So let me break that down. Firstly, in terms of building unique skills. So if you're aware of a trend that's coming up, and many of your co-workers are so busy with their day job and their personal life, they're not focused on it, you could develop those skills to make yourself more valuable to the company. For example, learning Python coding is kind of important, or kind of a new skill for many of the other roles outside of tech. Some people who work in risk management, having Python coding skills help them to come up with new ideas and create new systems and ways of doing things a lot quicker than people who just are simply working in risk management without coding skills. Then building your personal brand, like I was saying, having a personal website to show your skills. Other aspects of building your corporation, you as a one-person corporation, could be your financial independence through other income sources, real estate investments, moving abroad. And if you focus on things like that, then you won't be so dependent on climbing a company hierarchy. That's a very rigged set of rules that might not be working for you. So for example, say you make a few property investments, or you invest in one property, and after 5 to 10 years, it'll generate a certain level of income that will allow you to live abroad. And if at the same time you've been building a personal brand online, and you have maybe a few tech projects you've been working on, and you have a few clients who are freelance clients, in the sense that you're a freelance web developer and you can make a couple grand from your web development skills online, and maybe a grand from your investment property, then you can move abroad, save money, invest more aggressively, focus on building your personal brand, and in that way you can transition out of the corporate world if you want to. Now, point number 11, the final point here, is around mindset. Mindset really does matter. You want to control your destiny. Okay, have your own identity, which is bigger and more varied than your day job. And also, and that goes back to something I was mentioning just on the last one, around health is wealth, right? Whatever that means to you, whether it's having your identity through maybe doing martial arts, spending time with your family, cooking healthy meals, whatever that would be, all those things to have a broader identity beyond your job. So if things aren't going well, you're not kind of crashing in your mindset of, oh, I'm completely a failure because my identity is completely tied up to the job, which is very difficult. I would say, particularly if you are a man and you derive your sense of self-worth by being competent and skilled, and you're getting marginalized through all of your own, is very difficult. But like I say, mindset is kind of important here. And so even if other co-workers have their whole entire personal identity tied to their work, job title, salary, whatever that would be, it's important you think independent of that, and that will give you the mindset to embrace more job hopping, investing, focusing on minimalism, lowering your living cost, self-employment, as I just discussed, to create a true sense of freedom in your career, right? Having a freedom career rather than just a corporate career. So it's a whole different mindset. And like I say, I do cover these in my coaching program. There's a link in the description if you want to speak with me directly. And what I help you do is achieve complete career control, right? I'll help you map your strategy from climbing the corporate ladder to developing financial freedom, outsmarting office politics, surviving at work, particularly as a man, with all these type of awkward social dynamics, preparing for promotions, and getting layoffs and how to handle a layoff process so it benefits you. So if you're interested in it, link in description if you want to speak with me directly. And like I say, I hope you've learned from these 10 or 11 rules. If we just recap it here: company loyalty is a con, harness your ambition without attachment, avoid the inferiority complex, promotions aren't always a good thing, sometimes progress is out of your control, top management is a closed network that you might not have access to, a lot of the times your job will be temporary, you have to jump to another job to get the salary rises you're looking for, sometimes work isn't really just business, it's based on personal dynamics, charm, charisma, being popular will generate you cash in the corporate environment, build your independent sense of self-worth and your independent income sources, and having the correct mindset for dealing with these challenges the same way a boxer would, a martial artist would, anyone dealing with any type of typical offensive and defensive strategy that you see in sports like the NFL and things like that. So, link in description to speak with me directly. Let me know in the comments what are the harsh truths about climbing the corporate ladder do you want to share with us, and I'll see you in the next video. 2 recommended videos on the screen right now.